Welcome back to Hey Girl Hey, Life Through the Lens of Female Friendship. I'm your host, Becky Kessler-Sykes. Today we are going to cover some ground, to be sure. We've got a powerhouse of wisdom on the pod today and my absolute bestie. If you've listened to Hey Girl Hey's welcome episode, then you've already gotten a little taste of our friendship. Together, we're going to explore the idea of healing, which, as we know, can refer to a couple of different things. There can be the realm of physical healing, of course, and then the more mental, emotional layer. And that's where things get really juicy when we dive into that inner work that's required for healing. There's no bypassing the muck, y'all. So I generally share a quote at the top of the episode. If you're a parent, you probably know a book called We're Going on a Bear Hunt, where there's a group of children out in nature and they're navigating rough terrain, whether it's mud or dark forests or high grass. And each time they come across a challenging bit of terrain, they return to the refrain of the book, which is, we can't go over it. We can't go under it. Oh no, we've got to go through it. I just feel like that's such an appropriate share for this particular episode, because that is certainly what I've learned on my road to healing, which doesn't have an end, by the way, and you don't ever arrive at destination fixed. No one understands this more than our guest today. She's built her life's work, both personally and professionally, on prioritizing healing and hearing the call of the inner work necessary for that healing. Mia is here with us today. Mia is my ride or die. She is a yoga teacher, life coach, healer, high priestess. You did officiate my wedding. And absolute chosen sister. I've been inspired by her for the 18 years I've known her. She is a former dancer. She is a dog lover and fierce champion for good in the world. She currently lives in London, but holds tight to her California roots. We have shared adventures, tears, and more laughs than I can count. Brace yourselves for a modern day goddess. Mia Togo is in the house. Mia, hey girl, hey.
Oh, hey, that is some intro. Thank
It's all
you.
real, girl. That's you. So thank you so much for
Oh,
being here. You're calling in from jolly old London town. So we're working with an 8-hour time difference, and we're going to jump right in. First things first, you recently had a big surgery, and it's only fitting to ask, how is the healing going? You want to share that with everybody?
well, the healing is going really well. I had a full hip replacement a little under 3 months ago, and it's something that was working its way up for the last few years. And my surgeon basically said, oh, you'll know when it's time. And I did. My body was like, you know what? It's time. And my mom had hip problems when I was younger, and it led to a really bad limp. And I just remember her not dealing with it. And it really kept her from living her life more fully. I really wanted to address and go toward what my hip needed. Even though I got scared, I was like, yes, I'm going to do this. And then there was the no. I'm like, no, I could wait longer. But going through it, it was such a recalibration because my body has been how I really listen to my intuition and my inner guidance. And so it felt like going deep into the roots of my hips and my pelvis and reorienting and everything. I'm going to be honest, it was very traumatic and I felt overwhelmed. But as I came through it, I gave myself so much grace and gratitude for my body. I really came into it from that place of love. I said, go slow and be compassionate. And I have to say, I mean, I've really showed up for the rehab part of it because any kind of healing work, you got to participate in it. Every day is a little something different to tune into.
Yeah, it's ongoing for sure.
Yeah, like the healing process of all kinds.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
What do you feel like helped you through the fear pocket that you went through? Where I remember you going through that time
hmm
before the surgery, like, am I going to do this? No, maybe I'll just shelf it for a while, or I don't think I can do this. Am I going to get the support I need? Like, what helped you ultimately face it?
I think it's all what I do in all my work and my work with my clients is go toward the fear, go towards the shadow. I really let myself rinse my fears and things that were logical, but things that were not logical. I let myself have tears. I let myself feel what I needed to feel. I let my inner child and my little girl go, my mom's, nobody's here to take care of me. There was all of that. I mean, my husband
Right.
was here, my dog. But I let myself process. And then when I was able to feel all of it, I got through the other side. I'm like, okay, physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and psychically ready to go toward this. And I think that's so important to name. If we don't process and rinse our fears, we can be physically and mentally ready for something, but emotionally and psychologically, we may be saying no somewhere. And I think it put me back online to go, okay, we got this. And it,
I mean, I feel like any challenging, painful, confronting experience in our lives is where we're going to experience the most growth. You know, it's a really fertile, rich time in that sense. I was thinking about when you were talking about your hip. I don't know how many people will resonate with this, but I feel like so many women have hip issues. My hip bothers me. I'm 46. Danielle has hip stuff, like, and I almost wonder how much of it is energetically connected. You can probably explain
Mhm.
this more than me, but what settles in our hips as women?
Well, they call the hip area, like in yoga, the dump area. And I think we are the receptacle of so many, thoughts, feelings, and memories that get held in our body. I was a professional dancer. I pushed my range of movement way too far. And I was also a martial artist. I was a snowboarder. I was a runner. So my body has lived some life. So I think it's a plethora of different reasons: physical, structural, emotional, all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're constantly sitting at desks or in cars or, it's like all of our emotional stuff just kind of settles to that bend in the body. And so
Yeah.
that's what I think about physically when I think about it living in our hips. To your point, using your body and having a part get kind of worn out as they will for all of us as we age.
Mhm.
I'd much rather have aches and pains from overuse in my life and being physically active than having aches and pains from being sedentary or
So,
not taking care of my body.
yeah, and I've always taken, for the most part, really good care of my body. It's something I prioritize. So I look at this as, from a yoga perspective in the hips, like you said, the roots, where like a lot of our identity is formed from the beginning and where we carry our programs and our systems and our conditioning of our family bonds. There's a beautiful kind of interconnection of all of it.
I'm hoping you can give our listeners a little context of the timeline of you leaving Los Angeles and moving to London and share a little bit about what preceded that move and what followed. I feel like that was a really confronting time for you with a lot of change going on and a lot of healing happening in tandem with that change.
Yeah, I think it's so multifaceted, but I won't back up too far, but I'll back up far enough where, I mean, you knew me when I was married and when I was going through loss and divorce. And even though it was something I had initiated, there was a lot of shame and guilt around it and a lot of healing that I needed to do around it. And when I was going through that healing process, I started to see my coach that I'd seen for years. And she was helping me work with the grief of my marriage and also the grief of having lost my mom some time back. My mom was in a coma and she had a stroke and she was never going to come out of it without being brain dead. So we had to take her off feeding tubes. And even though, we all knew it was the right thing, it's what she wanted, it's still more shame and guilt. I was meant to see her to deal with it. And my ex from years ago called me and said, I don't know how to tell you this, but Mona has been killed in a car accident. So as I was coming in to deal with double amounts of grief, the person who was there to hold me, who held a very mothering position to help me through so much difficult traumas in my life, died instantly. And it was just so life shattering. I had to stay really still and process a lot of that grief. And as I came out the other side and life continued from there, things shifted and changed. There was specifically a moment when I was teaching at Yoga Works, which I loved, and I have a lot of community there, and you were there, and it was a crowded room full of amazing humans. And I remember looking out there going, I love my life here, but I'm ready for something so different. I had the call and it's coming. I just felt it. It was a whisper. It was a seed. I didn't know where it was going to go. And then I think it was summer of 2017, I was doing this little photo shoot thing on a horse and I had this wedding dress that was a vintage dress. And basically the woman's like, if you can keep it for $200. And I'm like, I don't need this dress. I'm not getting married again. And then I did keep it. And then the end of the year, I led a retreat in Tulum. I had done a lot of processing work while I was there. A lot of grief work came up for me. And I literally sat out on the beach feeling this sort of openness. And my now husband walked down the beach and walked towards me. And we talked, we met, we felt something special. I left 1 hour later. And that was planting the seed. He's German, but he was living in London. And so we started this relationship. And then we, after 5 months, got married. And I was just like, you know what? I'm taking a leap of faith. I'm moving to London. I'm ready to change my life. And I wasn't leaping away from a life I didn't love, but it was moving towards something that was that call of like, you're here to do something different. Knew that we may or may not work out. I knew that. Like, I've been through so much death and rebirth. I was like, well, if it doesn't work out, it'll suck, but I'll be okay. I think the more that you do the inner work, you trust yourself, no matter how hard it is. I will not
Mm,
abandon me. I will
right.
not let myself down. Then I got here in London and it was full on. I was like, wow, you're here to learn another layer of growth. So
Right.
much of my identity just got stripped away and I felt like I got scoured. And at the same time, it was giving me this rebirth of coming closer and more deeply connected to who I am.
The confidence that it creates because
Hmm.
you're really integrating, I got myself. I'm my biggest support. I got me no matter what happens. And when you have that kind of certainty about yourself, it doesn't make life easy, but it certainly lets you know that you're going to be okay, whatever comes your way. And so then you are more willing to take risks and
Yeah.
lean into growth because you got you.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of doing shadow work, which has been a big part of my work. The more that you are willing to take yourself into the shadowy parts of your personality, the subconscious fears, the more that you embrace them and work through them, the more that they don't drive your choices. You
Hmm.
process what is there, and then you integrate that. Because I think anything that takes you out of your comfort zone or what's familiar, it's absolutely going to bring up fear. Fear is not the
Right.
problem. It's how we work with fear. We learn about how to navigate fear by the households we grow up in and how to deal with feelings and emotions. So nobody
Right.
taught me how to deal with anger and sadness and grief. I had to learn that for myself. And it doesn't
Hmm.
negate all the wonderful things that I did learn, but how to reparent and where the ruptures are to repair so that when I am thrown into a time travel trance of fear, I can pull myself out of it.
Right. So
Yeah.
you mentioned a couple of things throughout the course of us having this conversation. You've mentioned rinsing and shadow
Mm.
work, and we're going to get into both of those little buzzwords very soon. But I first want to back up a little bit more because you also just touched on how you become the way that you are and the groundwork that is laid when you're a child and your family structure and the messaging you get from your culture and all of those things play into it. You've sort of had this intuitive voice and this need to question the status quo since you were a young child. I'm hoping you can share how you first cultivated your process around inner work because I love hearing the story of you in the woods.
Well, my parents could see the sensitivity I had as a child. I think they saw when I was in because we went camping a lot. So we spent a lot of time in Yosemite, Sequoias, Shasta, some really magical places. We went to the Grand Canyon, we went to Grand Teton, Zion. I can remember things so clearly because for me, it's where I connected to who I truly am, my truest essence. And I felt like there was a sense of wholeness and integration. And when I would come back into just, the human world, what I would pick up on is I felt like sometimes people were saying things, but their energy wasn't matching. And I could feel that distance and that separation. It felt disorienting. When I go into nature, it's where I kind of reclaim my center. And as I got older, and fortunately, I had the opportunity to have a horse, and I would ride out into the hills by myself. And it was a very spiritual experience where I communed with something bigger than what I understood intellectually. And I remember sitting in those places and I just felt this presence. And it's like I knew who I was there. I felt whole. And I
It
remember
sounds like you were
thinking,
connected to source and connected to God,
hmm,
for
that's what it felt
whatever
like.
word people are comfortable with. But that is when you're in nature and you're around just that grandeur and you feel really aligned and whole. I think that's
Hmm.
the peace that you've been offered is the
Yeah.
godlike peace, return to source.
Coming back to that source because it's so easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of all the doubts and the fears and yeah, and I think that's what really took me on that path of self exploration, self study. I'm like, I want to understand this better.
I think about if we had met when we were young girls because I had a horse too and we camped a lot. We went out on the lake and I can just picture us as little girls like out on our horses barefoot and sneaking a cigarette in the woods or like getting up to shenanigans or something.
Yeah.
Um, and that would have been such a beautiful thing to share with you. But as the universe would have it, we did not meet until many years later as adults. in the Yoga Works community here in Santa Monica. That was such a magical time and community of people, I would say for a solid decade. I mean, we're talking about the same people in the same rooms with the same teachers and beautiful yoga practice and beautiful spiritual component and just community overflow. It was magic. I miss that time in a sense. But what was it about yoga that really drew you in?
My initial experience with yoga is I didn't like it. I took
Mm,
a yoga class and I thought, this isn't really for me. And I think the place that I took it felt a little culty. I don't know, it rubbed me the wrong way until I went to Yoga Works. And it was Yoga Works where I was like, oh, it was the sequencing that made such sense to my body. I
right.
couldn't describe it at the time, but it was also the soulfulness of it, the roots of what Yoga Works started with in 1987, of really honoring the sacredness and the philosophy. It wasn't a studio trying to get people through the door, it was a school. And I
Mm.
think that's what drew me in is I loved learning and I loved learning how to be in my body in a sacred way. I just felt like Yoga Works was the real deal. And I could tell the difference when I went to other studios.
Well, it had a real lineage and it had been
Mhm.
passed on from some very legit practitioners and people that
That's
really
right.
did the work and understood the philosophy of yoga. And for people that don't know yoga that well, there's a very Western version of yoga where poses are just kind of thrown together and you turn the music up loud and you get sweaty. And to your point, Yoga Works was more thoughtful. And if you have an externally rotated pose, you want to end on an internally rotated pose. You want to have a peak pose that everything's kind of leading up to. You want to have an appropriate cool down, and with hip openers. Like there's a real distinct formula that is taken seriously and does really make a difference in the body. And your body is your vessel to get into your mind and your spiritual practice. So it's important, and haven't found
Mm.
anything quite like that since. Where are you teaching these days? Let's get that out to our listeners too, so that they can find you online, or if they're lucky enough to be down the road in London, they can come see you in person because you're an amazing yoga teacher. Like, whoo, girl, the best of the best.
Well, thank you. So I'm at Home Wellness in Primrose Hill in London, and I'm right around the corner at the Life Center. And I'm still teaching for Yoga Works online. So you can take my classes at Yoga Works online. It's in real time, and then you can also watch them later on demand. So it's kind of a cool setup for people who still want that Yoga Works casing and philosophy and style.
So I want to return back to something really important. You briefly mentioned your teacher and longtime therapist, Mona Miller. She's got a book that's really helpful for people. Even though I never met Mona, I certainly knew of her as a character in your life and was with you through that season of grief when you lost her. I very much feel like you're carrying on the things that she taught you and making them your own, of course, and giving them to people, these tools.
Yeah.
Could we stop for a minute and honor her by way of you sharing the influence she had on you and the ways in which you carry her on in the work that
Yeah.
you do? Maybe specific to rinsing, even because it's a really fascinating modality that's really specific to you and what you offer.
Yeah, I think my interest in psychology and therapy and coaching started when I was a teenager. I studied it. I actually went to UCLA and I have a degree in psychology. And as I started to do my graduate work, and I was in therapy, I liked therapy. It helped me a lot. But what I kept feeling is I was talking, and I could sit there and feel seen and heard, which is great. But I kept repeating the same patterns. And it was
Hmm.
almost like the more intellectually I understood myself, I couldn't process what emotionally had landed in my body. And this is where I feel like somatic work of healing is so key. So when I found my way to Mona, what I did love about her, she wasn't a therapist, she was a coach. And not in a coach in the way that maybe we think of today. It's not like goal setting and which is fine. That's just not what she was. It was so not protocol. But what I loved about her work as a therapist, you can't share deeper parts of your own journey. But what I loved about Mona, she would, and with appropriate boundaries. And I could resonate with that. When she called me out on my stuff, which she did with love, she would help me really identify where I was repeating these patterns that I internalized that happened to me and some things that didn't even happen to me, intergenerational trauma, which I knew I had pretty young because I was repeating patterns that I did not live. But because of my mom's abandonment issues, which she never told me about, I got them. So what I was learning is until I could rinse this out of my body and release the hurt and the fear and the abandonment, I was repeating it and attracting it and creating more drama in my life. And as much as I intellectually understood it, I always say a thought can't change a thought. You gotta feel where the body memory lives. So I was able to physically rinse on a pillow, but use like a tennis racket.
Explain it in detail what rinsing is, because I mean, somebody's like, you rinse off in the shower. Like, what is rinsing exactly? What does that look like?
I'll give an example. Like at the time when I would go into like trauma trances with, let's say, my ex-boyfriend, and he would go into the perfect like avoidant, and I would go into the anxious, if you're familiar with that. But once my feelings were activated, once my anger and my judgment and my hurt were up, and then we just push it back down and push it back down, and the body can't hold all of that. So in the rinsing, you get to use blame and judgment as a tool. You get to write about it, whatever. I'm like, no censoring. I write it out, because if I don't get it out in a constructive way, it's coming out destructively over and over again. So I could get the big feelings out, like, fuck you, I'm so angry, I'm so sad, I'm so hurt. And then I could take the tennis racket and hit. It's about getting in a rhythm in my body and releasing where I feel unloved, unheard, unseen, so that the energy that's been pushed down gets to move. And also, so I'm not judging what I'm feeling. So it breaks the trance, so that when you rinse it, your body gets to move and feel and release. But here's the more challenging part for a lot of people. Then you have to flip the lens, because every relationship is a mirror. Both things are true at the same time. Is he avoidant? Is he shutting down? Yeah, but I chose that. So I can't change him. I can only change my participation in it. So as I could process what I needed from him so desperately, I had to start giving to myself. I had to repair where the hurt happened way before I ever met him.
I was just going to kind of repeat back to make sure I'm understanding it. So, you're doing a writing exercise where it might be something like, whoever I'm thinking about, you're so weak. I hate you. You motherfucker. You were supposed to take care of me, all that kind of stuff. Right.
Mm,
And then you beat, not in a controlled way. You want to let all of that out, but in a
mm,
contained way, as far as it being safe. You're
mhm,
not breaking plates and hitting the
mm-mm.
TV with the racket. You're pounding in a particular place, maybe kneeling on a pillow. You're taking care of your body while you're doing it,
That's right.
getting all of that stuff out. And then you go back to that same writing exercise, but you read it as if you're reading it to yourself. You were supposed to be there for me. You're weak, so that you can internalize those triggers as your own and take some accountability for them, because you can't just offset
Absolutely.
it to somebody else, you know?
Well, and a really healthy way to read it is, there's a different couple ways, but like you said, you're supposed to be there for me. You're so weak, blah, blah, blah. You read it from your little girl, your inner child, to your adult
Mm,
self. So you would say,
mm.
Dear Becky, when I look at you, you're so weak and I feel so unloved, blah, all the things that you are thinking and feeling, because your inner child is needing you to repair and reparent that part. The more that we repair and reparent that part of ourselves, then we are not needing somebody else to do that. So, like you said, if you can constructively get anger out, because anger is not modeled in a healthy way. So, when we let our feelings move in a safe, constructive, yes, and that's a very important way, where nobody gets hurt, then we take accountability for our feelings. That sometimes, I don't know that many people who were modeled how to process their feelings. They were told to shut them
Especially
down,
women.
especially
Especially women.
women.
Generally speaking, anger is a more masculine emotion, but you hear Alanis Morissette come out with Jagged Little Pill and it's like a
That's
revolution. Like,
right.
that's not attractive to be so mad, and like, keep it cool. Don't be crazy. Don't be a bitch. Like all of these things. If a woman is tapped into her anger, and a lot of that is changing, obviously, but it just makes you even more angry when you don't feel allowed to feel what you're feeling.
Well,
Um,
and what's so interesting, I think the more honestly we go into the messy, murky, shadowy parts of our personality, the lighter life is. The deeper you go, the lighter I have found life is. The owning part is like kind of everything.
yeah, it kind of is everything. Um, I love you so much. You got so much wisdom to give the world. I'm so grateful that I've gotten to benefit from it so much over the years. I mean, you're my best friend, but you've been my yoga teacher. You've been my my coach in moments. I've gone on yoga retreats. I've done an 8-week workshop with you called Coming Home to Wholeness, which I think you still do a version of that. I want you to plug that in a second. Your coaching business, there's just so much richness in what you provide for your clients and then the people that are lucky enough to be in your inner circle. So thank you. I love you. Yeah. Tell people how they can reach you if they want some of these tools.
I will have a website, miatogo.com. So it has access to, I have a couple courses, but the one that you can do that's self-paced is called The Courage to Hear Your Call. I'm on Instagram, so it's Mia Togo, just my name. And I post little things to help and support you. If you're interested in any kind of individual coaching, you can find that link on my website. And I'm doing a retreat next year in Morocco, which there's a little bit of space left. So there's that.
I dream of going. It's in May, right?
Yeah, it's around your birthday.
I know. We'll just have to see what life is holding at that point.
I'm going to go with that manifestation. And you are full of wisdom and support and love and encouraged me in every way. So much love and gratitude in all the ways that you've shown up for me, for the world, and what you're doing now.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Before we close out, I want to do something fun with you that I do with all of my guests. We've got a little rapid fire signature questions here on Hey Girl Hey. So Mia, name a place on your travel bucket list.
It's interesting, Japan, because I am half Japanese after all.
Yeah. You're half Japanese, back to your roots. I like it.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Lights on or lights off?
I like candlelight, twilight, in between. I don't know. I don't like it totally off, but I don't like it bright because I'm like,
What TV show title describes your life currently?
Maybe it's Mayfair Witches. I don't know.
I like that.
Close to Mayfair, and I'm practicing my witchy ways. How's that?
That's perfect. Chocolate chip cookies or potato chips?
Chocolate chip cookies.
What's a song that's sure to get you on the dance floor?
I'm going to have to go like old school, Best of My Love by The Emotions. You know, the other one, it gets us on the Brick House.
It doesn't take a lot to get us on the dance floor. Like if there's a dance floor and there's a song, it's pretty much the formula there.
If the dance floor is there, I'm like, can we start dancing now?
I remember at my wedding, the first song that we played, it was literally California Love. And I look over and you're there. You're already on the dance floor. Who would you pick as your road trip buddy?
You.
Yeah. Good.
There was one, I just remember we were playing a lot of Alanis Morissette and we were just singing at the top of our lungs and it was awesome. And then there was always Coachella where we had our dip stop.
Girl, we've had so many. We've had Whataburger moments and Chipotle
meltdowns,
cat fights. And
it was so good.
But that's when you know you've got a true friendship and sisterhood, is because a little bit of conflict or tension. I'm not going to bail on this just because we're not in complete alignment of how we look at something. I have enough respect and love for you to sit down and figure it out, you know?
Like rubbing our edges is how we smooth them.
Well, you and I could chat all evening and I'll probably call you tomorrow, but thank you for sharing yourself and your gifts and your bright light with our listeners. We all have inner work and healing to tend to. No human gets to be exempt from that painful process, but not everyone chooses to go there. We at Hey Girl Hey hope you're finding the support you need and the courage to hear your own call. Thank you so much for listening. And next week we have another special guest. So we're going to sign off for now. Hey Girl Hey, saying goodbye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.